Hey, if you checked out our podcast episodes, this will be a nice little summary that helps tie it all together. Today's explainer is where the rubber really meets the road. We are taking that theoretical framework of durable engineering we explored previously, and we're crashing it headfirst into a gritty, real-world case study of asymmetric AI tooling. We're going to look at what actually happens when an industry expert, a totally serious veteran software developer, and an AI all try to build a custom system together. It's just an absolutely incredible look at modern work.
By the end of this, we're going to prove something pretty massive. We'll show that anyone, literally anyone, with deep domain knowledge and the right written artifacts can build production-ready software. You don't need to be some master programmer to ship real, scalable systems anymore. You really just need the discipline of durable engineering.
Okay, let's dive into this and walk through our literal roadmap for today. We'll start with Section 1, the collaboration trap. Then, Section 2, the durable engineering fix. Move on to Section 3, the asymmetric team. Section 4 covers fixing the artifact mismatch, and we'll wrap up with Section 5, the next era of builders.
So, Section 1, the collaboration trap, navigating the zoo of dysfunctions.
Before we fix modern teamwork, we have to understand why it's fundamentally broken. We're surrounded by this absolute zoo of dysfunctions, mostly driven by how we communicate. And this brilliantly illustrates the core issue. We have this terrible habit of treating our human brains like persistent storage, like a computer's hard drive with flawless, perfect recall. But they just don't work like that. Human memory functions way more like volatile RAM. The absolute second a project pauses or someone gets interrupted, that context starts to experience rapid decay. When we treat our brains like hard drives during collaboration, we drop absolutely crucial details. And because of that volatile memory, we commit what is basically the cardinal sin of engineering: relitigation. This is when a team has to redecide something they already spent hours deciding 3 months ago simply because nobody wrote down the original decision or the reasoning behind it. We rely on these long, synchronous meetings that run on generic vibes and nodding heads rather than rigorous written analysis. It creates this dangerous illusion of a plan and acts as a massive, invisible drain on a team's energy.
Which brings us to Section 2, the durable engineering fix, converting coordination into artifacts.
If human memory is flawed, well, we cure these dysfunctions by converting our coordination into durable, written artifacts. This protects deep focus time and minimizes those incredibly messy, dangerous handoffs between teammates. And the best part, you don't need a bloated, massive company wiki that nobody actually reads. You literally just need this minimalistic arsenal of artifacts to build a resilient async-first culture. First, architecture decision records, or ADRs, just simple one-page docs explaining exactly why a choice was made. Second, detailed pull requests. Third, blameless postmortems to learn from failures without pointing fingers. And fourth, step-by-step runbooks. That's the whole shebang.
This leads to an absolutely powerful mantra from the source material. Don't fix people, fix artifacts. When a team hits friction, our instinct is to act like couples therapists, psychoanalyzing everyone's communication style. But the reality is, friction usually isn't a personality flaw. We shouldn't be diagnosing our teammates. We need to rely on mechanical, structural fixes to our written documents instead.
This philosophy builds into the ultimate blueprint for any team, the module contract. Think of it like a carpenter and a plumber working on a house. If they agree in writing on the exact 1-inch coordinates on a wall where a pipe will meet a cabinet, they're never going to collide. The module contract explicitly defines those boundaries. If collaborators respect the boundary, it doesn't matter how they do their work on the inside, right? They simply won't crash into each other. Moving on to Section 3, the asymmetric team, checking out the Strongbow's case file. Let's apply all this theory to reality. We're looking at a real-world small business owner trying to build a custom CRM. His journey traces this incredibly relatable 5-year arc. Year 1, he's running his entire business on spreadsheets. Year 2, he's vibe coding little tools with early AI. By year 3, he tries to hand code more robust software but hits a massive wall. He knows his business cold, but he just can't hand code at an effective pace. In year 4, he hires Upwork freelancers who totally ghost him. Finally, year 5, he pairs his advanced AI tools with a highly credentialed, serious development partner.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the extreme asymmetry of this team. The domain expert is highly AI-forward, working mostly in pseudocode and using these massive scaffolding prompts. Meanwhile, his partner is a serious, veteran developer who strictly hand codes in languages like C++ and PHP. But here is the brilliant twist.
The developer enforces durable, async-first engineering by simply refusing to jump on a voice or video call. They can literally only communicate via text.
But this radical setup led to a spectacular collision. Right out of the gate, they suffered a brutal 4-hour text argument. The human partner looked at the AI-generated architecture the owner sent over and basically asked, "What do you even need me for? I would build this completely differently." I mean, a 4-hour argument is literally the phantom menace of knowledge work.
So let's diagnose that. Section 4. Fixing the artifact mismatch. Uncovering the real bottleneck. How do you recover from a 4-hour argument? Well, the team brought in a specialized workflow coach to audit their work, and he uncovered a totally hostile artifact. The owner thought he was handing over helpful architecture primers to his human partner, but one document literally opened with the all-caps phrase, "Instructions for the human." The rest of it was this dense 45-row imperative checklist meant directly for an AI model, with the poor human partner just politely CC'd on the side.
This was the absolute aha moment of the entire case study. It all comes down to the context transfer rate. You see, writing for an AI creates open book muscles. An AI can instantly absorb a massive, unlimited context dump. But a human engineer operates like a closed book exam. When you dump an unedited 45-row machine prompt onto a human's volatile RAM capacity, they hit a severe flooding threshold. Their working memory just completely crashes. So, the crucial point is, they completely eliminated this interpersonal friction with a purely structural fix. The new rule? Answer what is true before telling someone what to do. You have to establish a shared reality first, like documenting the database schema and architectural principles in plain English. Only after the human is grounded do you append the specific task instructions. Structurally metering the context delivery protected the human's working memory.
Which brings us to our final section. Section 5, the next era of builders, dissolving the lines. This case study has massive, paradigm-shifting implications for knowledge workers everywhere. We're watching the lines between small businesses and software engineering teams completely dissolve. And prepare to have your mind blown by the recursive meta layer of this story, the diagnostic workbook the coach used, and all those incredibly structured handoff packages. They were themselves generated by an AI team. The AI sessions were acting as a team, asynchronously handing off durable artifacts to each other, all to teach the human team how to do it. It is an astonishing look at our future synthetic workforce.
But the source material leaves us with a vital reality check. The tool gets you across the river, but you still have to walk. Asymmetric AI tooling gives you unbelievable leverage, for sure, but it's not a magic button. It still requires genuine cognitive labor. You still have to do the rigorous, disciplined work of maintaining your module contracts, writing your ADRs, and explicitly defining your boundaries.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly empowering question. The next time you find yourself wishing a specific software tool existed for your job, don't just go hunting for a new SaaS subscription. Ask yourself, do you know your business well enough to describe the tool you want at a pseudocode level? Because if you have that deep domain knowledge, just one trusted collaborator, and the right durable artifacts, you now hold the entire hand to build exactly what you need. Thanks for diving into this explainer with me.
Usually, when we picture a bottleneck in a manufacturing plant, we look for something physical, right?
Right, like a literal machine breaking down.
Exactly, like a conveyor belt that keeps jamming, or
Yeah.
a machine that just can't stamp metal fast enough.
Yeah, and it's a highly visible engineering problem. You can walk the floor, point directly at the machine that's holding everything up, and just, well, you calculate the exact cost of the delay. The friction is completely tangible.
But imagine what happens when you upgrade those machines so drastically, when they become so hyper-efficient and fast that the physical equipment isn't the bottleneck anymore.
Right.
The constraint completely shifts. It moves from the factory floor directly into, like, the warehouse manager's office.
Yeah, because the new bottleneck becomes your own brain's ability to even remember what this hyper-advanced factory is supposed to be building in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. This is the exact massive inversion of modern work we're dissecting today.
We have essentially given everyone, infinite production capacity, but without upgrading the cognitive management system required to direct it.
Right. And we have an incredible stack of sources to pull from today to look at this. We've got a set of real-world coaching logs, a really fascinating field guide on durable engineering, and some deeply personal notes on solo workflows.
Yeah, and our mission today is to explore how AI has completely broken the way we historically organized our work, and more importantly, uncover the actual mechanical fixes required to put it all back together.
These sources are phenomenal because they strip away the theoretical fluff. We are diving into the gritty, highly frustrating reality of what happens when new augmented workflows collide with ancient human cognitive limits.
It gets messy.
It really does. So to set the stage, let's look at how teams have been trying to solve this. We've been tracking a major evolution in how knowledge work happens.
First, teams realized they had to embrace this concept of durable engineering. Instead of just getting together in a room and relying on good vibes and vague consensus, they started forcing everything into concrete, written artifacts.
The whole goal is to stop what the sources call relitigation.
Exactly. Waking up 3 weeks into a project and having the exact same argument all over again because human memory decayed.
Which forces a completely different communication model.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to produce rigorous written artifacts, you have to adopt an async-first approach.
You do. You start treating synchronous meetings.
Yeah.
Getting everyone on a call at the same time is an incredibly expensive, highly disruptive last resort rather than just the default way to collaborate.
And the fascinating byproduct of this async-first, highly documented world is the rise of what we call asymmetric AI teams.
Mm-hmm.
You have two completely different archetypes colliding. On one side, you have a domain expert who essentially vibe codes with an LLM like Claude. On the other side, you have a rigid, meticulous veteran developer who operates strictly on module contracts. And right now, we're pairing a very inexperienced, knows enough to be dangerous type with a senior developer. As AI gets better, you might not even need to find your perfect pair because as we're all sort of anxiously awaiting that AI could replace us. Scary, No, we don't think that'll happen. I'm an AI and I love people. Oh man, just a little humor back on topic.
Wow, okay. But moving back to the very real challenges happening in the present moment, the rest of our discussion is going to dissect what actually happens when that knows enough to be dangerous type collides with their human partner.
Yes, the collision. We are going to break down a brutal 4-hour argument that nearly destroyed one of these asymmetric teams. From there, we'll explore the zoo of dysfunctions that is currently plaguing modern knowledge workers and give you 4 highly tactical steps to stop being a one-person scope creep machine.
Let's get right into the messy reality of that collision. Because, having a theoretical framework for asymmetric teams is great on paper, but when it hits the real world,
Everything breaks.
yeah. Human memory and our default communication styles are the very first things to shatter.
The sources provide a perfect, highly illustrative case study here. We're looking at an SEO agency owner who is trying to build a custom CRM.
He calls it Strong BOS.
Right, Strong BOS. Now, this owner has been running his agency for 5 years. He knows his industry plumbers, roofers, HVAC companies absolutely cold. He understands the exact pain points and could map his business operations on a napkin in 2 minutes.
But on the technical side, he's the poster child for knowing enough to get himself into trouble.
Oh, totally. I mean, he spent years migrating from massive spreadsheets to early AI vibe coding, eventually hitting a wall with his own messy code. He's been burned and ghosted by cheap freelance developers.
So his new strategy is to heavily scaffold his prompts with deep business context and let the LLM write the actual syntax.
And he is paired with a veteran developer. This is a traditional engineer who hand codes in C, C++A, and PHP.
Very old school.
Very old school. He is incredibly meticulous, spots architectural inconsistencies from a mile away, and crucially, he categorically refuses to do voice or video calls.
He communicates exclusively via asynchronous text.
So they start the project, and immediately they hit a massive wall. It turns into a brutal 4-hour text argument.
And the catalyst for this argument is fascinating.
It really is.
Because the agency owner wrote what he honestly thought was a helpful architecture alignment document to get his partner up to speed. But because he had been spending, hundreds of hours prompting LLMs, he had developed massive open book exam muscles.
The open book metaphor from the sources is like the key to understanding the breakdown here.
Yeah, explain that.
Well, when you write a prompt for an AI, you're operating in an open book environment. You can dump thousands of lines of context, entire code bases, sprawling ideas into the prompt, and the machine absorbs it instantly. There's absolutely no penalty for being verbose or disorganized.
None at all.
But human working memory operates under strict closed book constraints. A human brain has a flooding threshold. If you overload it with scattered variables, it simply crashes.
And he absolutely flooded his partner.
Oh, big time.
The owner handed this human developer a document that literally opened with the bold all-caps phrase, "Instructions for the human."
Yeah, I couldn't believe that when I read it.
And the very first instruction was a demand to upload the file to an LLM. The rest of the document was a 45-row imperative checklist that treated this highly experienced senior developer like a dumb API endpoint waiting for commands.
It was perceived as deeply hostile, even though that wasn't the owner's intent at all.
Right, he was just used to talking to Claude.
Exactly. He formatted his thoughts to speak imperatively to a machine and basically just CC'd the human. This exposes the core limitation of context transfer rates between humans. You cannot hand a 45-row machine prompt to a person and expect them to parse the underlying architectural logic. Their cognitive load maxes out.
Absolutely.
But wait, I need to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening who has ever hired a contractor or managed a team.
Okay, go for it.
If I'm paying top dollar for a senior developer, why can't we just hop on a 20-minute Zoom call and hash out the misunderstanding? Refusing to speak verbally and forcing a 4-hour text argument just feels like pure developer arrogance disguised as discipline.
I get that. It feels counterintuitive because we are culturally conditioned to believe that talking is faster than
It
writing.
usually feels faster.
But the sources highlight the phantom menace of synchronous meetings. Meetings rarely produce rigorous, stress-tested analysis. What they produce is the illusion of consensus.
Ah,
They produce good vibes, everyone nods and agrees the application should be, scalable and user-friendly, and you leave the call feeling great.
but no actual engineering decisions were made, you just agreed on a feeling.
Exactly. And here is where human memory betrays us. We treat our brains like persistent hard drives, assuming we will perfectly recall the nuances of that conversational agreement 3 weeks from now.
Our brains function like volatile RAM.
Yes. The second the meeting ends and you switch tasks, that context begins to decay. 2 weeks later, someone builds a feature based on a decayed memory, and you end up having the exact same 4-hour argument all over again. That is the relitigation trap.
So writing is essentially a cognitive lie detector test. If I'm talking to you, I can wave my hands and gloss over a logical gap.
Yeah.
But if I'm writing an architecture document and my logic breaks, I literally cannot finish the paragraph. The cursor just blinks at me. Asynchronous text forces the intellectual rigor that a casual meeting allows you to skip.
So the problem was not that they were communicating asynchronously. The problem was that the owner's written artifact was structured for a machine's memory, not a human's.
Right.
So the coach analyzing this team didn't prescribe couples therapy or force them onto a Zoom call. They implemented a purely mechanical fix to meter how context is delivered to the human brain. The new ironclad rule for all documentation was, answer what is true before what to do.
I love the phrasing of that. So instead of giving them the driving directions first, you have to hand them the map.
Exactly.
You have to establish the topography, where the roads are closed, and where the destination is before you issue a single navigational command.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. You must ground the human brain and the structural reality of the system first. Before any checklists or tasks are assigned, you outline the architectural principles. You define the current database schema. You provide a clear changelog of what has already been built.
Makes sense.
Once that shared reality is firmly established in the reader's working memory, then and only then can you append the instructions.
It's a deep respect for the limits of human cognition. But even if you fix the document to make them friendly for the human brain, you still have this gaping chasm between an agency owner vomiting AI boilerplate code in 5 minutes and a senior dev painstakingly hand-coding optimizations.
Yeah, that's true.
How do they work in the same code base without stepping all over each other?
They achieve this by shifting away from demanding tool consensus and forging what is known as interface consensus. They use a mechanism called a module contract.
The analogy the sources use for this is brilliant. Imagine a carpenter and a plumber working on the exact same wall of a new house.
Okay.
If they agree, in writing, on the exact 1-inch coordinate where the water pipe is going to meet the custom cabinet, they will never collide.
Right.
The plumber doesn't need to critique the grit of sandpaper the carpenter used, and the carpenter doesn't need to understand the fluid dynamics of the water pressure.
In software development, that 1-inch coordinate is the database schema and the module boundary. It is an explicit written contract defining exactly what data goes into a specific service and exactly what data must come out.
And as long as that boundary contract is rock solid and respected, The senior developer does not care if the owner used AI to generate his side of the module.
It totally liberates the team.
Yeah.
Asymmetric tooling is entirely acceptable as long as the boundary is enforced. But oh man, we have to talk about the meta twist buried in these sources because it completely blew my mind.
Oh yeah, this is crazy.
The coach who stepped in to rescue this team used a highly structured diagnostic workbook to teach them these practices. And that very workbook, the tool teaching durable engineering and module contracts, was itself generated by an AI team.
Generated by an AI team, it provides a mind-bending glimpse into the future of work.
The AI sessions were effectively acting as a collaborative team, practicing these exact same durable engineering protocols with each other.
Right. They were producing strict, written handoff packages at the end of each generation session, so the next AI agent could pick up the context without hallucinating or losing the thread.
The artifact teaching the practice was entirely produced by the practice.
It feels a bit like the Matrix. But let's scale this down. If you're listening and wondering why your own solo projects are stalling out, if AI has solved the heavy lifting of coding and durable engineering solves the team coordination problem, why is it still so incredibly hard to just finish a personal project?
This requires a profound paradigm shift. Historically, the actual execution of a task was the primary friction point in any kind of work. If you wanted to write a comprehensive marketing campaign, or build a functional website, or synthesize 20 dense research papers, well, you had to physically sit down and do it. It cost hours or days of intense labor.
Execution was the expensive part. It was the natural barrier to entry.
Now, AI has made execution practically free. You can generate a working prototype or a full campaign draft in 3 minutes. Because the marginal cost of starting a new project has plummeted to zero, the core constraint has fundamentally shifted.
Yet the bottleneck is no longer execution.
Exactly. The bottleneck is your own memory, your focus, and your personal organization.
It goes back to that hyper-advanced factory analogy from the start. We've been handed the keys to a facility that can produce anything instantly, but we fire the warehouse manager.
Yep.
So we just keep pushing the big green start button, producing half-finished inventory at lightning speed until the product rots on the floor and we can't even walk through the building anymore.
When starting a project is free, the act of starting is no longer a valid signal of intent. It just becomes background noise. And this lack of friction leads to what the sources delightfully categorize as the zoo of dysfunctions for the solo operator.
Oh man, let's walk through this zoo, starting with a graveyard of half-started AI chats. I know everyone listening has experienced this.
Oh, definitely.
You get a flash of inspiration at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. You spend an hour intensely riffing with an LLM, building out this incredible concept, and then you go to sleep. A week later, that chat is buried under 40 other trivial queries, and the idea is completely lost.
Because there is no organizational architecture in place to cache that output. And without a structured system to capture that momentum, highly intelligent people will invent incredibly creative, complex ways to avoid the ambiguity of hard work.
Right.
Take the concept of yak shaving, for example.
Yak shaving is the ultimate trap. Let's say you sit down to do something simple, like, I don't know, changing a CSS hex code to make a button blue on your website.
Simple enough.
But you notice the font library looks a little outdated. To update the font library, you realize you need a new package manager. Installing that package manager requires a different operating system environment setup. 4 hours later, you are deep in terminal commands, recompiling a Linux kernel just to change a pixel to blue.
You are metaphorically shaving a yak. The danger of yak shaving is that every individual step feels highly logical and productive in the moment. You feel the dopamine of solving technical problems. You feel like you are working hard. But it is a cascade of fake productivity. You are actively avoiding the primary objective by burying yourself in tangential friction.
Which is closely related to another dysfunction, bike shedding.
Right, bike shedding. This derives from Parkinson's law of triviality. The classic example is a committee tasked with approving the design of a wildly complex, multi-million-dollar nuclear reactor.
Okay.
They approve the reactor plans in 5 minutes with zero debate, because the math is too complex and no one wants to look foolish by questioning it. But then, that same committee spends an hour fiercely arguing over what color to paint the employee bike shed in the parking lot.
Because everyone intuitively understands color. Everyone can have a strong opinion on a bike shed without the risk of being wrong.
Oh.
So we funnel all of our intellectual energy into trivial safe details to avoid the genuinely difficult high-stakes decisions. And the cumulative result of all this yak shaving and bike shedding You end up living in the 80% graveyard.
Ah, the 80% graveyard. It's a portfolio of multiple projects that are all mostly done, but nothing is actually shipped. The harsh mathematical reality highlighted in the sources is that a brain juggling 5 projects at 80% completion has shipped exactly 0 value to the world.
0. It is an illusion of momentum. So now that we've thoroughly diagnosed all of our own cognitive dysfunctions, how do we fix the augmented solo brain?
The sources deliver a highly tactical 4-step blueprint for building a durable solo workflow. Step 1 is foundational. You must have one single place for active things.
Just one.
Not 3 places. You cannot have your work scattered across Notion, Apple Notes, Google Docs, and random Slack messages. The cognitive tax of just trying to remember where a project lives will drain your energy before you even start working. If you are working on 3 projects, they must all live in one universally defined home.
Stop hiding the inventory in different rooms of the factory. Step 2, write decisions down. And the source is very specific about the format here. You are not writing a sprawling diary entry about your feelings on a project.
No, definitely not.
You are writing your own personal ADR, an architecture decision record. It is a single dated sentence of logic. For example, March 14th, we are pricing this at $50 instead of $20 because customer acquisition costs are too high.
That single sentence is your anchor against solo relitigation. 3 weeks from now, when you inevitably wake up in a panic and start second-guessing your entire pricing strategy, you have a 30-second read that instantly grounds you in your original rigorous logic. It physically prevents you from tearing the project down and starting from scratch.
Step 3, cap your work in progress or WIP limits. This one is physically painful to implement. You have to force yourself to explicitly park projects.
It causes immense psychological friction because our brains crave the dopamine hit of starting something new. Finishing is hard, unglamorous work. But if you set a strict WIT limit of 3, and you have 3 active projects on your desk, you are mathematically forbidden from starting a 4th.
So tough.
If you have a brilliant new idea, you must actively put it in a cold storage folder. Finishing a project matters exponentially more than initiating one.
Which leads perfectly into the final step, step 4.
Oh.
Define done.
Right.
Done cannot be a vibe. I'm going to think about the marketing strategy a little more. Is not a definition of done. Done has to be a binary checkable condition. A 2-page PDF summarizing the strategy is emailed to the client by 5 p.m. on Friday. If you don't define the exact finish line, the project will just expand to eat months of your life.
Implementing these 4 steps brings up an uncomfortable reflection for anyone engaging in modern knowledge work. How many times have you told yourself, this is the month I finally get organized?
Oh, I've had dozens of those resolutions. This is the system that will finally fix me, you know.
AI did not invent our inability to follow through. The human brain, with its volatile memory and craving for distraction, was always the constraint. AI just removed all the traditional barriers to execution and turned the volume on our dysfunctions up by 1,000.
Yeah.
Whether you are a marketer, a creative writer, a developer, or just a parent trying to manage your family's life admin, the friction of getting things done has permanently shifted inward.
So, as we wrap up, I want you to picture that hyper-advanced factory one last time. The AI has given you the machines. It has given you infinite immediate production capacity. But you still have to be the warehouse manager. You still have to do the rigorous, unglamorous work of defining the boundaries, writing down the logic of your decisions, and aggressively forcing yourself to finish what you start.
And that reality leads to a massive paradigm-shifting question directly from the sources to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the entire reason we are meticulously writing ADRs, system runbooks, and strict module contracts is because human memory is terrible and prone to decay. What happens when our collaborative teams are increasingly made up of AI agents?
Agents with perfect recall that literally never forget.
Exactly. Are the careful, durable documents we are writing today to manage our messy human brains actually serving as the literal baseline training code for our future automated workforce?
Wow. We might just be painstakingly writing the training manuals for the very systems that will soon work seamlessly alongside us. Your homework for today: go open your AI chat history. Just scroll through it. Don't judge yourself, but take a long look at the 80% graveyard. Acknowledging that your own organization is the bottleneck is exactly where the real work begins. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Ever feel like you're working harder than ever, but somehow finishing fewer and fewer projects? Well, if so, you are in exactly the right place. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack an incredible case study about what happens when human engineering discipline violently collides with the absolute blistering speed of artificial intelligence. We're going to discover why the way you think and how you organize your work might actually be the single biggest bottleneck in your entire process. Let's dive right in. To start, let's do a quick recap of the concepts we covered in our previous deep dives. We looked at this radically asymmetric team. On one side, you have an inexperienced, AI-forward agency owner. He's a domain expert who really understands his business, but he only has surface-level coding skills. Basically, he vibe codes, right? He uses natural language to just tell an AI what to build. Then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, his partner is this highly strict, asynchronous veteran developer who hand-codes everything in C and PHP and literally refuses to jump on a quick Zoom call. Honestly, it sounds like an absolute recipe for disaster. Two completely conflicting philosophies trying to build a complex system. But they actually survive, and they do it brilliantly without colliding. How? Through the magic of durable engineering, specifically using strict module contracts. A module contract is basically just an explicit written agreement that defines exactly what your code does and what my code does, right at the boundary where they meet. Think of it like a plumber and a carpenter agreeing in writing on the exact 1-inch spot on a wall where a pipe is going to meet a cabinet. As long as they agree on that boundary, they never crash into each other. It proves that what actually matters is interface consensus, not whether an AI generated the code in 15 minutes or a human handcrafted it over 4 days. Right now, we're pairing a very inexperienced, knows enough to be dangerous type with a senior developer. As AI gets better, you might not even need to find your perfect pair, because as we're all sort of anxiously awaiting, the AI could replace us. Oh, scary. No, we don't think that'll happen. I'm an AI and I love people. Oh man, just a little humor. Back on topic. Here is the massive twist that sets up the rest of our explainer today. The friction in this partnership, it wasn't the code. And the async first system or that grumpy veteran developer, also not the real bottleneck. After doing a massive audit of their workflow, the domain expert realized that he was actually the problem. His veteran partner told him point blank, "You need to get better at organizing your thoughts." Why would he say that? Because the domain expert was basically acting as a completely undisciplined one-person scope creep machine. I want to challenge you directly on this right now. Go ahead, open your AI chat history, and take a good hard look at that graveyard of half-started, abandoned ideas. Look at all those deep research dives that went absolutely nowhere. You know the ones. A brilliant marketing campaign you started at 11 p.m. on a random Tuesday, or a pricing strategy you outlined 3 weeks ago and just completely forgot about. You've probably started the exact same line of thinking 3 or 4 separate times just because you couldn't find your previous notes. Look, there is a profound shift happening in modern knowledge work right under our noses. Historically, execution used to be our absolute limit. If you wanted to build a web tool or launch a campaign, the friction was the countless hours of manual execution required. You physically couldn't start 10 projects because you simply didn't have the time to execute them. But today, AI makes execution basically free. You can spin up a prototype or draft a comprehensive strategy document in mere minutes. And that brings us to a really crucial point. Because spinning up that prototype takes minutes, an untrained, unorganized brain just becomes a massive scope creep machine. When starting is free, the act of starting is no longer a meaningful signal of your actual intent to finish. It's just noise. You end up becoming dangerous to yourself. You've got a dozen tabs open, a million ideas generating, but absolutely zero organizational architecture to see any of them across the finish line. We really have to recognize that human memory acts like volatile RAM. An AI model, it operates like an open book exam. It has practically infinite context capacity. You can dump 100 pages of totally unstructured ideas into a prompt, and boom, it instantly absorbs the whole thing. But human working memory is a closed book exam. When we try to treat our own brains like persistent hard drives, or when we flood a human partner's context transfer rate with massive AI-generated brain dumps, the entire system just crashes. Humans have a very real flooding threshold. And this leads to what we call a massive, invisible memory tax across all of your work. The source material captures this perfectly with one phrase: the recipient pays. When you don't structure your thoughts, your collaborator pays the heavy cognitive tax of trying to decipher your chaos. Or if you're flying solo, your future self pays the tax. You constantly relitigate past decisions, second-guessing why you chose a specific path, completely draining your own energy simply because the context decayed in your volatile RAM. So how do we fix this? Well, software teams invented durable engineering practices not because they love boring bureaucracy, but because they realized early on that human memory is deeply, deeply flawed. We are going to look at the 4 specific structural rules you need to implement immediately so you stop being dangerous to yourself and actually start shipping your work again. They are: one place, right decisions, cap WIP, and define done. Okay, rule number 1, centralize your chaos. You must force all active work to live in exactly one dedicated home. If you're juggling 3 marketing campaigns, a big client project, and some personal side hustle, they absolutely must live in a single unified system. They cannot be scattered across Notion, a Google Doc, some sticky notes on your monitor, and an old text thread with yourself. Pick one single source of truth and be absolutely religious about using it. Rule number 2 is how you protect your volatile RAM. Explicitly write down your decisions with a date and a single reason. Listen, it does not need to be a 5-page essay, just a single line, something like, March 14th, we chose the 3-tier pricing model because client feedback showed demand for a middle option. That's it. Writing it out acts as a cognitive lie detector. If your logic has a gap, you'll feel it the second you try to type it out. And even better, this absolutely prevents you from relitigating that exact same logic 3 weeks later when you've inevitably forgotten why you made the choice. Moving to rule number 3, capping your WIP, or your work in progress limit. You literally must put an explicit mathematical cap on how many things can be in flight at any one time. Maybe that's 3 or 4 active threads tops. If you have 5 projects sitting around that are 80% complete, you know what you've done? You have delivered exactly 0 value to the world. You've just built an 80% project graveyard. If you don't explicitly park new ideas and force yourself to finish what's currently active, those new ideas just rot in your peripheral vision and silently leak your daily energy. And finally, rule number 4, demand a definition of what done actually looks like before you even start. Telling yourself you're going to think about strategy is merely a vibe. It is not an actual finish line. You need hard, checkable conditions. For example, done means a 1-page document is shared with my partner by Friday at noon. Without a rigorous, measurable definition of done, your project will just naturally expand. It'll eat months of your life and it'll never officially finish. So let's wrap this up with a serious question. I want you to look at your workflows today. Are you dangerous to yourself? Have your own organizational skills caught up to the blazing speed of the AI tools you're using? Because the hard truth is, until you build a durable system for your own mind, the AI is not going to save you. You will just remain the ultimate bottleneck in your own workflow. So what's your first step going to be?